Hello friends, my name is Doll and welcome to my channel. Today we'll be going into one of my biggest pet peeves within the art community. Expensive art supplies versus cheap art supplies. Sometimes artists like to claim that you need expensive materials or materials of supposed higher quality in order to make art easier. This is a huge pet peeve of mine. Expensive and higher quality quote-unquote materials aren't guaranteed to make art easier for you, nor make you better at art. Now, before I go any further into this, there are some exceptions to this in which you may actually be required to have expensive and higher quality materials, which will be discussed later in the video. First things first, why is this such a frustrating subject to begin with? Money doesn't grow on trees, and many young artists may feel discouraged to do art or feel their art isn't good enough to show because of the materials they use to make the piece. That in order to better their skills, they need supposedly better pencils, or an expensive graphics tablet, or costly software like Photoshop. I still remember back in the day, about 400 years ago, when my peers would gush about using Photoshop for their art, and that it was a must-have for artists. Wacom tablets were also all the rage as well, and not too many low-cost tablet options were really a thing back then, especially in comparison to what we have now. Don't even get me started on Prismacolor pencils and Copics. They're not bad materials, but they costed an arm and a leg to purchase. It was ridiculous. Technology and art supplies in general have come a really long way, and I find it absolutely amazing just how accessible affordable art supplies are now. We should be encouraging our younger peers to look into these resources and let them know they're still an artist regardless of what they use. Where I even use copy paper and dollar store mechanical pencils and pens for my art. Back in the day, Paint.net and GIMP were my software of choice too growing up. This is before credit became more mainstream and we had viral pack and stuff like that. It's become a real game changer for new artists and even for older artists too. And just what's wrong with using art supplies that are much more accessible to artists? Along with a cheaper price tag, if not a free one, having art supplies that are much more accessible to folks is a pretty sweet deal, in my opinion. Like I said earlier, we've come a really long way since the 90s and early 2000s. More and more software and traditional supplies are becoming accessible to artists day by day. Hell, thanks to YouTube, we're even able to see reviews by actual artists of these lower cost art supplies. Some of them even utilize these lower cost supplies in their art careers to this day. Who's to say that we, the average hobbyist or budding artist, or hell, even a well-known artist couldn't do the same? It's not the tools that matter, but rather how we utilize them. Finally, we have to address the elephant in the room, the exceptions. In order to take certain art classes or use certain tools in general, it's important to know how far you can stretch the limits of what you're allowed to use. Some tools need very specific supplies in order to get decent results. Watercolors or alcohol-based markers, for example, need a thicker paper in order to not warp, damage, or bleed through the piece. As for art classes, many will require you to either purchase certain software or use very specific supplies in order to do the assigned projects for the class. In these instances, it's important to work smarter, not harder. If you're a student, you can get a hefty discount at certain stores when ordering your supplies or buying software, or even use coupons to help lower the price. The Extension Honey, not sponsored, is actually pretty good for this, as I myself am an absolute penny pincher, and if I can find affordable deals, sales, or discounts, then you can bet your bottom dollar I will, and frankly, so should you. Basically, the bottom line is, don't let people pressure you into paying for more expensive supplies or software when there are perfectly fine cheaper, if not free alternatives that are just as good. Expensive tools won't make you a better artist. Practice will. And one more thing I want to touch up on that mainly applies to digital artists in particular. More and more companies are starting to render their art software as subscription-based. While this isn't inherently a bad thing, as they need to make money too in order to get the cost down, it can be very inconvenient for folks who just don't have the money to keep spending to use the software long term. Adobe does this with their products currently, and Celsius is starting to follow suit as well next year with Clip Studio Paint. Technically, there is Paintable Side that has a one-time purchase, but it's also pretty costly, especially for new artists who are just starting out. That's where open source software comes in. They make money via donations, and for some, you can purchase it with some extra perks that don't take too much away from using the free version. So you're not even missing out at that point. If you need help finding these low-cost or free software options, I'll leave a list down below. Also, feel free to comment your own recommendations, so together we can help each other grow. I also plan on testing out some of these programs to see how well they run for a complete amateur like me. So stay tuned for that. That's all I have for now, so thank you for watching and take care.